Aloha, everyone, and welcome to Redtime Stories. I'm Tamara Mackay, your host, and I'm here to share stories and talk about things that have to do with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness while protecting our First Amendment rights. Here, we also discuss concerns that affect our local communities here and across the country, as well as presenting you with some educational tools that may make your life better. Welcome to episode 15, where we have the opportunity to talk stories with many guests today. I'm super excited, and this may be part one of part two, and we'll continue next Thursday. Today we have with us Dan Turner, Tarita Tahatu, Bob Reed, and Helen Tupai. We will be discussing items regarding financing, investing, and so much more. And I hope that all of you can take something away to get your finances on track or pose some questions that you may have and present them to me for next week's show to get things in order that you may not have thought about. I appreciate everyone who has tuned in. We have a lot of great past episodes. If you've missed any of our shows, you can find them on my YouTube channel at Redtime Stories. You can also go to Rumble and look for the Liberty Arise Media platform, and you can find not just past episodes of my show, but also Liberty Arise and the other hosts from other stories across the nation. You can also find us on Twitter, Truth Social, Locals, Facebook, and Instagram. So, anyways, I'm very happy to speak to our guests today. Looking forward to some great advice that they have for me and you and everyone. And so, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start bringing on our guests and let them introduce themselves to you, and tell them what they're about. And hopefully, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at writeasread@pm.me. That's writeasread@pm.me. So thank you, you guys, for coming in. This is really exciting. We have quite a crew here, some fabulous minds, and I know that you guys are going to have a lot of information to share with people. And hi, Helen.
Hi,
You know,
Tamara.
Helen spoke highly of everyone, and she's actually guilty of putting us all together. So with starting with that, Dan, let's start with you. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and what you're doing?
I'm Dan Turner. I'm the principal advisor for Akamai Wealth Management here in downtown Honolulu. I have branches here in Honolulu and on Big Island, Pipikio, where I live. My wife and I own a home there on 10 and a half miles up the pike. We're from Cleveland originally. We came in 2015, and she's a pediatric hospitalist who worked at Hilo Medical Center. And I have 42 years in financial planning, most of it in the Series 6, Series 7 realm, 16, 19 years doing that, 32 years in insurances, and worked a lot with credit unions and learned a lot about the ins and outs of banking, which is kind of a universal trade, if you will. But Akamai specializes in safe money and in wealth management and financial counseling, financial advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. And how about you, Tarita?
Oh, okay. So aloha, everyone. My name is Tarita Tehotu, and actually I was born and raised here. I lived outside of Hawaii more than I lived in Hawaii as a missionary. My husband and I pastored a church. We're church planters, but I've been married for 45 years. We just recently celebrated our 45th year. Been with this guy for 47 years. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a great grandmother. And, basically for 35 years, we've had different businesses, but we've had the years of experience as a wellness and financial health entrepreneur for my family. And we believe in the importance of holistic health and financial wellness. And basically in attaining both time and financial freedom was because of what we did, and a lot of humanitarian work. And, I became passionate about empowering people with effective strategies and begin to understand myself how I'm going to facilitate the creation of solutions, because we work with a lot of people that really didn't have that much. So, preserving my finances, saving my money, and I had no thought, I had no clue until I met Bob Reed, and I thought I was building and protecting my hard-earned wealth legacy, but I didn't until I met Bob Reed, and yeah, to really understand true legacy today, we could just go on from 2 years ago going forward. So it's been amazing. It's been an amazing ride to really understand and how we are all connected together to really understand the fullness of true legacy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Bob, of course, we're going to go right to you. She mentioned your name, so you're responsible for what Tarita is into. So, if you could introduce yourself and give a little bit of your background as well.
Uh, Great, and thank you for having me on today. It's a pleasure always speaking with red pill people interested in protecting our constitutional rights, especially in
Absolutely.
this last few decades that we've been experiencing. But I'm 77 years young. I have a chemical engineering degree and a master's in business from LSU. I uh, I served my military obligation. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and I worked in the corporate world for two Fortune 50 companies, uh, and started my career there, uh, building, climbing up, striving to do what we all have done. We're taught to get a good education, get a good job, and then we're
Hmm.
taught to save for our future retirement. And if we want to have a good retirement, we need to save at least 10 to 15% of what we make each month and store it up and invest it properly during that 50-year work cycle, or you won't live with the same standard of life that you enjoyed while you were in your working years. Uh, and that was all well and good. And I did all that stuff while I was in, as a chemical engineer, a project manager, a plant manager, and then stepping up into the corporate executive world, developing markets all over the world, a global product manager of 3 divisions, and then director of new product development, global expansion, acquisitions, and joint ventures. Uh, I uh, I started in the stock market in 1971 doing what I was taught,
Wow.
and uh, uh, and unfortunately I was in service at that time, and all of a sudden, about 4 years later, the majority of our investments, we of course wanted solid big companies, good bad. Well, Pan Am went bankrupt, and we lost everything.
Yeah.
And I said, whoa, that's my first reality. And so then I said, oh, I need to go back and kind of rehash MBA, got into mutual funds, got into a lot of diversification. Oh, yeah, they taught us that. But man, I really started applying that stuff. And, but, there's cycles in life, cycles in markets. And I've learned all these things over time. So I'm going to make a long story short for y'all. I went to the flat 80s where you flat 70s. And if you look at all the market indexes and everything, if you start an average person started out with 100 grand, they were lucky if they ended up with 85 grand at
Hmm.
the end of that time period. Then I
Hmm.
went through the savings and loans crash in the 80s, and also the housing crash in the 80s. And I want to tell you, when you hit those big dips, it takes 10 years and sometimes more to get back what you lost. And
Yeah.
uh, in about 1985, I decided I'm not going to leave my investments, my retirement up to other experts. God gave me this brain. He allowed me to get that MBA. And so I started really investigating what wealthy people do.
Hmm.
And I wasn't wealthy, but I was in the top 1% income bracket in America. So that was pretty good. And but I just wasn't getting ahead. Uh, and I found gold and silver. I found that
Mhm.
most wealthy people collect assets, land, businesses, gold, silver, art, collectibles.
Mhm.
And I started saying, whoa, man, that's true diversification. So gold and silver never goes bankrupt. It's God's money. And there's only so much of it out there. Now, I know investment advisors always say, oh, no, it's not a good investment. But why the heck do they all have it? And so, uh, I really got into gold and silver, learning about it, learning all the market players and everything. And I never knew anything about network marketing, multi level marketing, or any of that kind of stuff. I was going to buy a franchise so I could have time with my family. I was making a
Mhm.
double six income in the late 80s, early 90s. And that was pretty good income back in those days. And, but I had to buy all kind of things. I had to buy homes that I really couldn't afford so I could get the tax breaks that I needed so I could not spend, not the government take as much from me as I was giving them. And every time I got a raise, I had less than that take home pay. And I just wasn't doing myself some good. I've learned a lot since then from great financial advisors, by the way. That's who I learned it from. And so,
Right.
uh, especially in tax breaks. But I was introduced to this wonderful world. I call it mini franchising. If you get with the right companies at the right time, at the right places, I mean, literally, you can create uh, uh, your own retirement income, and you can get
Oh,
great 1099 tax benefits anyway. And I got with a gold and silver company that did not have a residual income, but I made my wealth back in the late 90s. And
mhm.
uh, and then I went on to do since I couldn't find another networking company that I really liked. I did real estate development. I did consulting in the networking industry, in the investment industry, and just helping people, uh, get debt free. I taught people how to get debt free. And to me, that's the number one thing. Get yourself debt free, no matter what income bracket you're in. Your goal is to strive to get debt free, and uh, and then that way you have your income work for you in a leveraged manner. And so
Awesome.
uh, I was introduced to a company that's how I met Tarita about 7 years ago, and it was a really kind of a no brainer. It's kind of like the Costco of gold and silver. Allows average people to own gold and silver incrementally, that everybody can afford it. But the most important thing to me, it teaches people what they've never been taught before in their lives about gold and silver. See, you and I, none of us are ever educated about gold and silver. Never.
Right.
And that's done on purpose, by the way. That's my view. It's done on purpose.
Mhm.
Okay. And uh and that the whole point is I got with this company, we grew with this company, and it can provide that legacy income. And that's where
Mhm.
I met a few people. I met quite a few people in Hawaii because I came over to spread the good word. And to make a long story short, that's what I'm doing.
Like,
Uh, I'm helping create a
Wow.
legacy for my children's children by helping a lot of people in the world. All right,
That's
back to
awesome.
you.
And so we want to get back to how you did that. And before we come back to you, I wanted to also let Helen introduce herself and give a little bit of background. And then I already have 3 questions to ask of you. But before we get there, Helen, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Tamara. Thank you, everyone, for coming on such last minute. I appreciate all the expertise each of you guys have in your specific fields will help our people, help our community survive and thrive in these last days, pretty much. So I really thank Tamara for hosting and opening this space for all of us. And I just wanted to let the experts, you guys, go ahead and share and educate all of us. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Helen. I'm grateful for you bringing everyone together. And this is the type of stuff that we need to continue to do is, maximize the talents of people around the community because as Bob said, there are things that people don't even know what to do. Everybody is in a panic. The current temperature of the political environment and how it's affecting our future and how we live today is devastating to people. And many years, even through the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, people never thought that they would ever have to worry about anything. Nobody in their right mind would ever think that we would in the current state of affairs that we're facing today. And we're being threatened on so many levels: our homes, our income, our food. People don't even know whether they're coming or going anymore, and the level of stress it's causing on everybody. The family is being destroyed, and unfortunately the government and the people that we have empowered or trusted to be in office are the ones that are destroying our family unit and the future that we used to, listening to my grandfather, working for, like, say, Ford Motor Company and looking forward to his pension. That's gone. And down to the simple things that we enjoyed of counting on each other in your neighborhoods and not locking your door. I mean, the what we're experiencing today is absolutely mind-boggling and biblical. It's like Revelations is coming to fruition. It's
Alive.
definitely be between good and evil. So, to the financial thing, it's very important, because one of the biggest things that is very fearful. Now, Dan, you mentioned something about credit union involvement. And when I heard what they were doing, like with the social credit score system, I heard that they were introducing it while we were in COVID in 2020. Now, a lot of people think that that was all done by design. And it's definitely proving to be that it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. And, you know, um, different things that were happening through the world. And when I went and I checked on one of the banks I won't mention right now, and we saw that they had that disclosure that was put on the banking system in 2020 of how they were going to manage it. We went right away and we put all of our accounts into a credit union. So, Dan, was that a smart thing to do?
I I would have to read it to better understand what you were just talking about. However, I will draw an immediate distinction between credit unions and a bank in that
Mhm.
credit unions are a member-owned, not-for-profit money cooperative. Banks are a relationship where you're a client, you pay a fee for service. And the one thing a credit union does for you, regardless of your relationship with a bank, it provides you with alternatives. And a quick story, I was running a small business back in the 80s and belonged to a good credit union. I also had a long-standing relationship with a bank where I lived, where my great grandfather banked, that kind of a relationship.
Mhm.
And I would go in and buy these business loans for cash flow purposes, stuff like that. And I'd gotten three or four of them and successfully paid them back. I needed another one in, filled out the application, and 2 days later, they called me back. It usually took about 45 minutes to close these, but 2 days later, I get a call. Come on in, we want to talk. That was new also. And I got in there and they sat me in the little chair and he was in the big chair. He was a young kid. You know, young kids when they wear suits and the suits are just like too baggy and just, I just bought this yesterday.
Mhm.
It's not worn in yet. And well, Mr. Turner, we're going to be able to do this for you. And it's only going to be uh, 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 we're going to be able to do that. And the interest rate's only 25%. And I said, 25%? They've always been 10 or 15% previously. I know, but it's, the time of month where money is low for us. So we have to make more and we're just charging you 25% compounded
Oh.
with a smile. And at that point, that just kind of irked me a little bit. And so I said, gee, that's too bad. Because I've also been talking with the credit union and they made me the same offer on a simple interest loan at 12%. Simple. And his jaw went, Banks are not prepared for you to have alternatives. They're not.
Mhm.
They assume that because you're in their chair, you have nowhere else to go, or why wouldn't you be there? But that's not how shopping works, is it? You find out what your options are, you make your comparison, you get their final offers, and then you make choices from an educated position. And the banks aren't ready for that. So if a credit union does anything for you, it will put you in a better position to negotiate your financial services so that you aren't held over a barrel, so that they can't take advantage of you on a take it or leave it basis. The end.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Because a lot of people are not aware of the difference between a credit union and a bank. So I
Correct.
really appreciate that, sharing that. Um,
They
Tarita,
do have a different insurance structure too. The NCUA is the governing body for credit unions. They do tend to have a higher threshold or reserve requirement than banks do. But now NCUA and banks both go by risk-based lending formats. The higher the risk of your lending portfolio, the more they have to keep, and the higher quality loans they meet, the less they have to keep. So it's a nebulous number as to whether or not they'll have the reserves needed to meet claims if the bank runs into financial trouble.
interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Tarita, I know you had mentioned you're involved in holistic. Uh, um, is that holistic treatment? Do you want to expand on that a little bit? And because I find that people are getting involved with that, and I'm wondering why, if that's the case.
I lost you just for a little bit.
Yeah,
So, yes, we lost you a little bit,
Oh,
Tamara. So, can
okay.
you
we lost
So,
your question.
okay, I apologize. So, I was interested in you mentioned something about being involved in holistic treatments. Am I coming in okay? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
And I just wanted you to expand on that. Do you feel that because of the current state of affairs, because um, medicines are more expensive, are you seeing an increase in holistic approaches now more than ever? You want to expand on that a little bit more as
Yes,
well?
I would love to do that. I think one of the things so here in Hawaii, my great grandparents, I was raised with my grandparents, and so they were holistic. They were actually healers, what they called la'au lapa'au. So we knew everything about a plant. There's certain things that we understand, and so we've used that. I've raised my children on that. I've raised my grandchildren on that. I can't say I'm raising my great grandchild on that because there's, this generation has a different mindset. But let me share with you, Tamara, what happened when I went from in the South Pacific to move back home. Someone introduced me to a holistic essential oils. So I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do this. Well, what happened is that I did get involved with that. And God just gave me a clear vision of why I'm to get involved with using these products. And I actually was totally against it. But God opened up my mind in just a more bigger space. In one of the verses was that the leaves of the trees will bring healing to the nations.
Mm-hmm.
And because I understood that, I didn't realize that led me into financial gain. When I was able, I didn't understand any of that. I did not understand what direct sales is, but I knew that this is things that we use already for our bodies, and how it was to be used was amazing because the doctors were involved. So when that began to blend in, it actually fell into the category where I was very familiar with when it comes to science on the body and how do we use biblical, right? It wasn't something that man made up. This was really what God made for our bodies. So when I moved to that holistic, I also moved in. The Lord just really gave me a holistic, not just the holistic healing in just measuring and taking our bodies back to homeostasis spiritually first, right? And what happened, I thought it would just be a fad, but it still, that company is still on for 15 years. And so people are using that. It allowed me, it was an open door where the Lord gave me that this company would be used to, again, for not just myself, but many people around the world. So we had 22 countries that was under us. And I would say under us because of what the position I am in today. But what happened with that, I want to go back to what Dan was speaking about. It led into one door opened another door where I was taught differently to just hold my cash in my home. My father said to us, don't do any banking, don't do this and that. So I didn't understand. I just thought that this money was something very valuable for me. So I hung on to it, right? For 12 years, I've been hanging on to this. And so when my mind opened about that, it was another holistic healing that this time that I personally needed first. It was a whole holistic healing, a financial healing that I needed to happen. That just opened my whole brain. Now, I want to add one more sentence to this.
Sure.
How can we actually continue to do the work that we're doing if we are so dependent on what someone else will tell us about our bodies, where everybody's body is different? So our bodies can heal themselves if we know exactly what to give them. Tamara, we need to know what we're giving our bodies. And I tell you, we went through 2020 with that whole craziness. But our home, my husband sitting next to me, our home was full with people and really weighing it out. What is good for you? What is not good for you? What's best for you? And we was able to invent, I say invent, but it was God's invention. We put all our things together and we were able to make things for people who wanted to wear masks. I was not willing to wear a mask. I was totally against that. And I had to get educated more and more. But what we did do, God provided that for us, for those who chose to be vaccinated and who chose not to be vaccinated. So that's where I really feel the balance of it. And I couldn't really judge those that were and those that wasn't, because it was their choice. But when they came to us, we were ready to serve both sides. Yeah. Amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's a lot of people need to be educated on how to heal their body. I do agree with that. They don't know. And again, we're falling victim to information that is not healthy. We are being, like, the FDA or our government is allowing food to be served to people, or ingredients inside of our foods that are outlawed in other countries. And that's what we have to continue to educate people about, that, and give them alternatives. So I'm really glad to hear that. I'm really grateful that you're on here. And I do believe that we're going to have to do a second segment, because we need to educate and start giving people solutions. And right now we're in the fact finding, and we're showing people, you guys, and presenting it out there, that there are people out there who do have solutions to the problems. Now, Bob, you had mentioned gold and silver. I know that, and that land was, a security, and it always was meant to, if you have a house and you have land, there's no problems. However, there are people who are thinking that land isn't as secure anymore in our current state of affairs, because it seems like there's people who are coming in and they're forcing people off their land. The government is using taxes to levy against taking land. So people aren't as secure in having that land anymore. Would you like to address that?
Yeah, I address that. And you're absolutely right. Times are changing. Political atmospheres are changing. Uh, Rules and regulations are changing, and not necessarily changing in the republic constitutional manner that we had we're supposed to be living under, but more of a dictatorial, totalitarianistic, this is the way it's going to be by the people on high down to us plebes.
Mhm.
And so, yes, uh, yeah, I I still believe in being debt free. Okay,
Mhm.
I want you to have shelter and paid for. Uh, but when you get to the point that you are debt free, then you're accumulating assets. You know, my first thing is uh, land is one of the later ones when you got really wealth and you
Mhm.
don't know what to do, and depending on your age and depending on
Mhm.
your family makeup. But uh, land, your own home can be taken away from you for taxes. So
Mhm.
if you can't afford the taxes that they're going to prescribe on you, then you're going to lose it anyway. Okay.
Mhm.
So, uh, you know, uh, uh, gold and silver is something, thank goodness, right now, it is it is the thing that you and I are in control of. If you know how to buy it, you know how to store it, you know how to collect it, so you don't have to store it at your home. I don't recommend people store gold and silver at the home. Okay, there are ways that you can put it in significant amounts for people in private vaults, which is non-regulated, non-reported to the government. So Dan said it, Tarita said it, and I'm going to say it.
Mhm.
People need to get informed. People need
Yes.
to learn. People need to have enough information to make informed decisions. If you get the information, just like Dan put it so well, with credit unions and banks, if you get your information, you can make an informed decision. You don't have to make decisions on emotion and
Mhm.
impulse. When it comes to money matters, the number, that's the old chemical engineering in me. Numbers never lie.
Yes.
Historical numbers and projection numbers. And, the history, it doesn't always uh, tell what the future is going to do, but it is a dead gum good predictor of it for sure. If you know how to read,
Mhm.
if you know how to look at the numbers and you break them down so it's simple. And my approach is to make the complex simple for the average guy and gal. So
Mhm.
when I'm talking to a person, they don't have to have a PhD degree. They don't have to they don't have to have an MBA. I mean, many of the successful people in my network, my new family, and I call it my new family. Every associate with me, part of my new family. Uh, they they just need to put an effort in to learn, and they need to put consistent effort in to learn every week a certain amount of time until they get the information they need, then to make the decisions that they need to make. So, yeah, you're exactly right. Tarita's exactly right too on the holistic. I mean, it brings up the whole new thing. See, one of the markets I developed was pharmaceuticals. I mean, that's what I did. So I knew that market real well. But just look at what we're talking about. The information that we're providing to your listeners right now, today,
Mhm.
how many, that holistic approach? Oh, believe me, I believe in that too. Because you know why? How many of us trust the medical community anymore? Can you really
None.
trust?
No.
Okay. And can you really trust the pharmaceutical industry? Well, I can speak as an expert from that because I came from it. Okay. And so, no, it's out for pure unadulterated profit, and
Absolutely.
do whatever it takes. Uh, those vaccines should have never been put on the marketplace. We now know that,
Yeah.
and even in
We knew
retrospect, even in retrospect, they are killing every one of the complete medical studies by renowned doctors and researchers proving that there are so many deleterious effects to these vaccines that's happening to people today and will for decades to come.
Yes.
How can you trust
They
that
told
kind of?
us these were dangerous back when they rolled them out in December of 2020. Everything that is going on now, they told us then. This is not news.
Right.
No, that's true.
Can
That's
I,
true.
can I add to that? Can I add to that?
Sure, Teresa.
Tamara, my father's pure Hawaiian, and he actually sat in school with us because he didn't allow us to take the booster shot. So everybody was getting the candy, right? I don't know how old you are,
Right.
but that's how everyone was standing in line. They got a
Yeah.
lollipop. And my dad will buy the lollipop for us and he would say, sit down. We were very impatient. It was very hurtful when you're a child and you don't really understand what the heck your father's trying to tell you about. Well, I mean, we just was looking at the lollipop, but that's
Right.
what 2020 did prior to 2020. It was the lollipop. And let me tell you, I understood a lot more now. Then I didn't see it when my children went to school and they came here in Hawaii and went to school. I was like, no, shot? Are you kidding me? No. Oh, your children cannot. Well, I'll homeschool them. I mean, just my children couldn't speak English anyway, so I might as well homeschool them. So those were the things that you never think about until when that timing comes for us to say aha moment, moment. That's what they were trying to do with us a long time ago. Now they set the scene up for us to be like little lambs going and being slaughtered. It's a Holocaust. I kid you not, it was.
Well, I
So,
think
anyway.
when you said aha, I think there's a really big aha that's going on right now. The aha is that the Amish community definitely had it right. How many children and how many people got sick in their community. So they're doing something right, and that's a whole other topic too, how now the government is trying to fine them for not vaccinating their cattle in a couple states, which is very concerning. So I want to continue on, but I have to take a brief moment to do a shout out for our sponsor, Be Nourished, which is the best honey products on the planet. So I'm going to take a quick break and we're going to come back. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the governor, our current governor's signing of the bill of the digital currency and your guys' thoughts on that.
Honey. It's one of the greatest gifts to man. With millions of wildflowers in every bottle, the nourishing power of honey is still yet to be fully discovered. Be Nourished Healing Products combines healing ingredients from around the planet to the purest honey from the island of Maui to bring magic to your taste buds. The best honey from the most beautiful place to nourish your body, mind, and soul. From our hearts to yours, be nourished.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please check out Be Nourished. They have fantastic products, and I'm not just saying that, but I did purchase their products so that I can speak to it truthfully. And remember, at checkout, type in Liberty for your 22% discount. Okay, so we have some great guests today, and I wanted to give Helen an opportunity to speak before we went and delved into Josh Green's fantastic bill. Just kidding, being facetious, on digital currency. So how about your take on some of these things, Helen?
I'm not for it. Yeah, I'm totally not for it. It's a form of control, going in that direction to control the people. So I don't support it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I know that before we get into, I know one of the topics that wanted to be discussed was, the revelations of the FDIC and the banking risks. How about let's kind of combine that also with because you guys have great minds. I'm trying to take advantage of the opportunity and of your take on this, because everybody's concerned, but they don't really understand this bill of what it means with the digital currency. How do you feel about that, Dan?
It's corrupt from its root, and the fact that our first district representative, Mr. Mark Noxzema, the medicated representative, came up with this. It was his bill, and he initiated it through the House and Senate as SB 525. The problem with it is once you digitize your currency, when, not if, when the government begins disagreeing with your positions, your philosophies, your religion, your vocal expressions, your letters to the editor, what you eat, how much you weigh, where you live, what you think, becomes subject to their whim, not yours. And if they don't like what you're saying, doing, or thinking, they simply turn off your money. And you will comply, because starvation is a miserable way to die. And unless you're really creative or have a lot of supportive friends, you're going to have problems. I think ultimately what a program like this does, if the legislature does not correct it, is to create underground economies. Because candidly, there's more of us than there is of them. And candidly, with our skill sets, background, economy, capacities, we will begin bartering around the system. And there's no way they can control that.
Right.
But the biggest problem is you want to give $20 to your grandkid for graduating or anything. Putting $20 in the collection plate at church or anything like that becomes impossible because there is no more paper. The paper money is going to go away. And the positive thing is that we've seen in several places in Europe where this is getting great pushback. And to the point where in France, they have serious riots over this sort of thing for the same reasons. So I'm confident that this will be kind of like our railway fiasco, that eventually they'll come to their senses and realize that they've just wasted 10.4 miles of concrete and just kind of quietly put that away and not talk about it anymore.
Right. And if you wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the FDIC, go ahead.
Okay. Well, the first thing is most people have a misconception of how the bank works. Many of us believe that when we put $100,000 in the bank, that the bank, well, it's in their pocket, it's their money, therefore it's an asset. No, it's a liability to the bank. The bank has to insure that money. They have to reserve that money. They have, well, not anymore, but they have to invest that money and create a return. And that return has to be managed for increased what's called velocity. It's a liability to the bank. It's an asset for you. And once you square that with what's going with your perceptions of banking, a lot of this comes into better clarity, I think. As you know, accounts are insured up to $250,000 through the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Fund Corporation. And there's several organizations like this, the Pension Guarantee Trust Fund, SIPC, NCUA for credit unions. All of them have essentially the same function of protecting cash and assets up to a certain level. And if you have anything over that, you're on your own. The problem that we have is in California, there was in the last 12 months, a fiasco called the Silicon Valley Bank. And there were like 17 other banks that went upside down because of and related to this. But the simple explanation is that banks take in money and they invest money in bonds as well as making loans and other investments, but primarily US government Treasury bonds, which are 30 years in duration, are used as a place to park money because they're safe, full faith and credit of the United States government, and they have a going rate of return. The problem in the last decade is that return has been around 1.5% to 2%. So there's a little bit of a rule in investing that says when interest rates go higher, bond values come down. So you pay $1,000 for the bond, it's a 2% bond. Interest rates are now at 5.5. Value of that bond has dropped significantly. When you have a portfolio full of that, now you have a liquidity problem because they have to correct the net worth of the company to reflect the value of the assets, which is shrinking. And when you compound that with people who have been putting in hundreds of thousands, in fact, millions of dollars into your savings accounts, as is Silicon Bank, because this is Silicon Valley, high tech, lots of great ideas, lots of profit, lots of surplus. They're putting it in the bank because the bank's federally insured, safe, liquid, savings accounts. What happens when the companies want their money for research and development or whatever project? And meanwhile, the portfolio value has dropped 60%. They have to sell those low value assets to meet those liabilities. They become illiquid, and the Federal Reserve steps in through the FDIC. Now, the FDIC, if you Google the term of how do you handle claims, because a lot of times we think about, well, if anything happens, they just send some guy from Washington with a big checkbook and he just starts scratching out fat checks until everybody's taken care of. That's kind of what they want you to believe. The point is, if you Google search that, the wording is, and I quote, in the event of a default, the FDIC will pay the claim within 3 to 5 days of the default, of the liquidation or the receivership. And they begin it with the word historically. So they're saying, historically, we pay our claims within 3 to 5 days of the collapse. Well, historically, that's true. But if you have any history in financial planning or financial services at all, you realize that the word historically has to be followed with the expression, past results are not indicators of future results. So I don't care what the history is. I want to know about tomorrow. And in 1993, I had the opportunity to have my butt kicked a few times by supposed investors who would not come out of the bank for love nor money because, hey, it's federally insured. I got my government guarantee with that through the FDIC. I don't want to take no risk. And how do you argue with that? I want you to go into a risk environment and put it in mutual funds and lose it all. So they're a little resistant. Well, I called the FDIC one day and expressed my concern for how exactly do you handle claims. And I kind of buffaloed them a little bit about the fact that, I don't work in a bank, but I kind of implied that maybe I did. And they sent me a brochure, 30-some page brochure. And in there, I went and I found that sentence, historically, we pay our claims 3 to 5 days, blah, blah, blah. But underneath it was remarkable because what it says, and this is the invisible knowledge that people don't understand, they can defer the payback of your deposit over 20 years in an annuity payout, which is essentially 5% of your sum per year. Now, if you have a checking account right now, and you have money in that account for, let's say, home improvements or any number of valid reasons. Look, I know people that keep $500,000 in their checkbook. Don't ask them why. It accumulates. You don't have anything better to do. It's just going to sit there. But if you have $500,000 and the bank goes upside down, what do you think are the bank's responsibilities to you in paying that $500,000 back? Zero. They cover up to $250,000, and you cannot tell me any circumstance over the last 100 years where the federal government paid a penny more for anything than it had to, unless it was like, President Biden laundering money through the Ukraine using Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. Funny, the only anti-money laundering we see anymore is the government.
Right.
But the point here is to warn people, I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, But if you can't see this train coming, I mean, look at what's coming at us. In May of this year, the Federal Reserve said, we don't plan on raising interest rates any further until autumn, okay, which is like October. What did they do last week? 25 basis points. That's 2 months early, 2.5 months before the point that they're already raising rates. I can see, I'm projecting 10% on the Fed funds overnight rate before the end of the year. That puts mortgages at like 12 to 13%. Okay. So here's the problem. When interest rates rise, bond value drops. Your banks are stuffed with 2% bonds. If they're already struggling to the point we've seen 17 collapses because of the raise of interest rates, and they told these knuckleheads, they told them back in January, February of 22, the Fed came out and said, we intend on raising rates 9 times in 2022. And they did. They weren't kidding. They're saying we're going to raise it several more times before the end of this year. Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of Chase Bank, told us profoundly that Chase is in a wonderful position for this and that it's our intention to step over the wreckage of these damaged banks and cherry pick the assets that we want for pennies on the dollar. He's not kidding either. They're ready for what's coming. Again, I don't want to be right, but if I'm right, then many of you are now thinking, gee, maybe I should do something about this instead of losing all my money in a guaranteed safe account. That would be profound. The point is there's other things you can do that qualify as safe money, tier 1 investments that banks would use, that credit unions would use to handle their reserves so that you're not subject to the whim. Because the bottom line, if you have your money in the bank, you will have a label. It's called depositor. If the bank goes into receivership, that label changes to claimant. Don't be a claimant. That's when you are at the whim of the insurance company. They decide they want to stretch your payments out for 20 years. There's no court for you to go to. This is the way it is. Historically, they haven't had to do that. But you know what? Historically, we haven't had to look at inflation, high interest rates, rates going even higher, war, stagnant markets, failures, corruptness in Congress that's now laid out on the front table for everybody to see, and more. That's not all there is. But if you're looking at that, and we've already triggered 17 failures, and banks by history buy US Treasuries, and they are all holding federal treasuries with very low interest rates, and they're all suffering from the same problem because collectively none of them need to keep reserves. All of them are holding low value paper that's going lower in value, because if you have 2% federal debt and you want to sell it, but the going rate is 5.5%, you have to discount your paper to equal the 5.5% yield. Why am I going to buy your paper? I can buy brand new 30-year notes for 5.5%. So you're going to eat, the bank is going to eat that to the point that they can no longer survive, and then receivership. Where were the federal regulators in January of last year when they first made these announcements? And they know these banks are chock full of what is now considered toxic assets, telling them, you know, interest rates are going up and you're holding a very large sum of bonds with very low interest rates, and it's going to end badly for you if you don't begin trading those out of your accounts. But nobody said a word. So this is a planned consolidation, folks.
Sure.
And the idea is to eliminate as many of these small branch banks as they can, so that the large banks like Jamie Dimon at Chase and Wells Fargo and Bank of America, and you name them, they're all in line. They want to, like they did in the communications industry, we now have 6, maybe 7 communication centers. You know, everybody else is gone. They're all merged.
Yeah.
So What I specialize in is the safe money aspect of that, of providing people with checkbook alternatives where they can make higher yields safely, no risk, and complete liquidity, and not be in the Federal Reserve System.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have a few more minutes, just a couple more minutes, and then I definitely, before we get to my last two questions, will all of you please come back next Thursday so we can really educate the people on solutions, um, and tell them how to get this information or how to do it, and be more action oriented. The education piece is just the starting point, and I'm just sitting here going, oh my gosh, what about this, what about that, what about that? And I know that other people are. But just real quickly, if you can briefly, Bob, a question had come up, and is you again, you talk about the gold and silver, and maybe this is something that can be continued on next week. A lot of people, because of 2020 and 2021, they had to spend all of their savings because we were shut down. And so now people don't have their savings that they have. A lot of small businesses closed down. It's like, how do they recover? How do they begin from that loss, that devastation of their nest eggs that they had?
Yep, great question. And a lot of it depends on a lot of factors: age, uh, where they're at, their current financial condition. But here's one thing that applies to everyone, no matter what age they are. Okay. Everyone through our program can start buying a little bit of gold and silver to be truly diversified. And if what Dan says happens, and I believe it will, okay,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I don't
I
believe
don't
it's
want to be right.
at all. But if they go to this digital currency, which the government's committed to because they want to control us, we're
Yes.
plebes, we're little p, we're little slaves, they're slaves. Well,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and Canada's already prototyped it. They've actually shown, hey, we can control everybody if we do this. Okay, and so they're committed to do this, and the banks are all behind it, and so are all the big companies,
Mm-hmm.
the oligopolies. Okay, and that's what we've turned into, a business oligopoly. And so you've got to have, if we go to a barter system, you better have a little bit of gold and silver, because that's something everybody always recognized. You look at history, no matter what, it's always been the medium of exchange. Now, and then everybody says to me sometimes, well, we got crypto. That's how I always hear on the side. Well, crypto's this magic stuff. What value is it? Well, let me tell you, you get an EMP. See, I know what EMPs are. I've been into the part I didn't say is my 18 years in politics. Okay. And so I understand the political system too, and how
Mm-hmm.
corrupt and it is today. And so, uh, you know, you got crypto and you got an EMP. Well, you don't have anything either. Okay. So you better have something. You better have some corn. You better have some wheat. You better have some beans. You better have some cloth. You better have some trade that you can trade. That's a barter system. But the
Yes.
one thing that is recognized around the globe, you can take your little silver bar like they're doing in Zimbabwe right now, and they're scraping off scrapes of silver and gold, and they got that other economy going on right now. Actually, that it's going on in 5 other countries right now. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually scraping silver and gold in the the new economy in those countries. So everybody can have a little. I don't tell everybody to get. Don't anyone get me wrong. I definitely won't Dan to get me wrong. I never tell anyone, hey, all silver and gold. I mean, that's ludicrous. You got to be totally diversified. And
Mm-hmm.
learning how to get high yield on your money in a safe manner, that's a great thing to do. Believe me, I've been looking at all kind of things like this because you know I want what liquidity I have. I want it to work for me, and I want it to work for other people. You don't want to hold it in that piece of paper like
Hmm.
Teresa put up there. That thing
Yeah.
that piece of paper, because the government's printing more of it up. The feds and the government printing this more and more up every day. It dilutes what you have. It dilutes what you have in any liquid form that's immediately convertible. And if you can't beat the inflation rate, you're losing money. So you got to
Hmm.
beat inflation. And inflation is more than just inflation. Inflation is dilution plus inflation. There's two things. You got to
Yes.
take the
Make,
dilution factor in there. Okay.
makes
Right.
sense.
I know you're
But
short on time, but I just wanted to get
yeah,
that. And
no, I
do
I
everything.
appreciate it. I think we could go on and on. It's like going down, definitely down a rabbit hole. And hey, Dan, don't, the conspiracy theory, it's starting to prove that us conspiracy theorists are proving to be right. So,
May
Exactly.
I say, real quick,
sure.
I'm an advisor. My advisor number is 322-422. Everything we talk about is not advice, nor should it be construed as advice. This is just a friendly conversation. Call if you want details. There,
Awesome.
I'm
Which
compliant.
leads me up to what I was going to lead into. So, how, starting with you, Tarita, if you could give a little information, how people can contact you and ask you more questions between now and next week, and we'll go from there. Everybody else, if you could give your contact information as well. Go ahead, Tarita.
Okay. Yes, my number is 808-277-6071. Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. And what are some
And
of the
since
some
it's
of the
local,
things that they can contact you about? It sounds like you have a wealth of knowledge on self-sustainability and holistic issues.
Yes. One of the things really fast, one of the things that has opened my mind, I knew the holistic part, but when I had the financial, I really didn't know how to balance that. I had no clue. I thought I had it together. I didn't think that I thought I was educated. I thought I didn't need any help. And then along comes all these people who are telling me, and I'm like, no, 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 because my father taught us to just keep the cash. Just don't go. We don't have a credit card. This is like, no, if you don't got the money, don't do it. So again, I was stuck in a mindset until when it came along and Bob Reed said how to diversify, how to do different things. And we go through a tax returns. Like today, I'm bombarded with my taxes. But, being holistic has not really been a popular thing until 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it
Yes.
has not been very popular until 2020. You should see my phones just were ringing off the walls. And in 2021, we were still stuck in that, it just carried on to 2021. So while I was helping others, along comes this financial diversity. How do I diversify? I was like, what was that again? What do I have to do? I was just one-minded. And I like what that said. You have to balance. These are things that you can't just be here. I went out to get chicken. I went out, you ask Helen, I've got stuff that preparing me to how to be self-sustainable. But again, it is your choice and your lifestyle. How are you going to balance it compared to you? And don't worry about everybody else is doing. But then glean from them, because it's a whole bunch of education. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Bob, how can people get a hold of you?
well, the best way to get a hold of me, because I'm, in the mainland and I have really prayed out. I don't do a lot personal anymore, except with my team now. And
Mm-hmm.
and you got, my team sitting right there. You got Tarita, and you got Helen. So why don't people just contact them? They'll give them the basic information, the beginning information. It's all free. It's all just, hey, learn something. Uh, Information never hurts you. And then if you got questions, the questions can be answered. And if they can't answer questions, then I'm available to them, and we answer any questions they want on our program that we'll introduce them to through GOLA.
Thank you so much, Bob. Well, he put it on you, Helen. So how can people get a hold of you?
Best one is probably via text 808-289-1077.
Awesome. Thank you. And Dan, how can people get a hold of you?
I am 808-464-5292, 464-5292, Dan Turner at akamaiwealthmanagement.com.
Awesome. Thank you again so much for being on. And I look forward to next week where we can expand more on solutions for everyone. And I'm sure that I'm going to have a plethora more questions for you. And maybe as I get them, I'll send them to you ahead of time as well. So with that being said, thank you again. Have a wonderful day. And I will see you next week. Aloha, everyone, and thank you to all those of you for tuning in as well. We hope that you tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Look forward to our same guest coming in next week. That is 3 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time on the Liberty Rise Media platform on Rumble. You can also find us on YouTube on our live streams at Redtime Stories. We are also on Red Pill, Twitter, and Facebook. You can reach out to me again at writeasred, RAGHTASRED at P as in Paul, M as in Mary.me for any questions, content, or video clips you may want to send in. Anyways, again, mahalo for joining us, and always remember, truth has no fear.
Amen.